Hello, everybody. My name is Caden, and welcome to another episode of Why We Love Graps. Today, I am joined by Seahawk Cam Hawkins from The Ringer. Cam, how are you?
Doing all right, man. I'm doing all right. Keeping it together.
Yeah. So let's go ahead and start by talking a little bit about what you do, what your relation is to wrestling media. I mentioned that you work at The Ringer. Just go into that a little bit about what you're doing there and in general, what you do in wrestling.
Yeah. So, specifically with the Ringer, I guess my primary role, I do a lot of wrestling interviews, and then kind of turn that into a long form piece, about the wrestlers' history, motivations, different attitudes, some events that they're dealing with or have dealt with. Yeah, like primarily like when an event's coming up, I will talk to somebody who's on the card, somebody kind of participating in a pretty major fashion, and just kind of break down, what put them in that position, the importance of this match, the importance of this event to them, what got them there. So pretty much, especially with the Ringer, it's kind of my primary role. A lot of interviews, a lot of long form pieces, going over the history and motivations of the subject.
Yeah, something that Cam does, just the way he writes the features, the way he puts things, he's able to put things into words that is just remarkable, and it's something that a lot of people, especially me, writers in the industry, admire, and it's really awesome just see how you put things together. It's really cool. So I want to go back a little bit. Let's go into when you first started watching wrestling and you first became a fan of professional wrestling. What are those first memories you have of it?
Oh, where's Ramon, man? Where's Ramon? I remember watching Scott Hall on WWF Superstars, and I probably saw him years before I saw Scarface, right? And like, growing up in Southern Maryland, like there aren't like Cuban people everywhere. You know what I mean? So he was just like this larger than life, the gold chains and the fits, and in Miami, and he was bigger than everybody, but he was so athletic. That was really kind of my first introduction into wrestling, especially with like, I think larger than life gets used like so much, and it's kind of a stopgap and a coverall for so many things, but he was that. He was absolutely that. I thought he was the coolest thing in the entire world. So like even before I have like memories of like Hogan and Macho and all those guys, it was Razor Ramon, man. It really was. It was Scott Hall playing that character and being so over the top with it, but serious about it, that really got my attention.
So then with those over the top characters when you first started watching, how does that evolve for you as you go through wrestling? For me, I know my personal experience was I got in with Shane McMahon versus Kevin Owens, that Hell in a Cell feud in 2017. And my personal love of wrestling transitioned from that WWE style with the heavy characters to more in the ring, like a Zack Sabre Jr. or Bryan Danielson. Did that evolve for you, or do you still gravitate towards those larger than life personalities more?
Well, I tell you what. So even though like Scott Hall, Razor Ramon is my introduction, I saw Scott Hall show up on Nitro
Mhm.
during a Mike Enos match, and I was like, "Oh, like what is this?" And like, he's not Cuban guy; he's white guy from Maryland and Florida, but like he's still like the baddest dude in the whole world. You know what I mean? So I think what really got me was the reality aspect of wrestling, like them kind of pulling back the curtain just a bit, and you getting a better feel for who these guys were as people.
Yeah.
And then the thing about WCW and WWF had, they had Bret Hart, they had Shawn Michaels, they had Owen Hart. So there was some really, really good wrestling. But with WCW, on top of this NWO stuff, you got Rey Mysterio, you got Dean Malenko, you got Eddie Guerrero, Ultimo Dragon, Chris Jericho. I was like, oh, like this is also wrestling. Like
Mhm.
it's not just beat the guy up. Like this is like athletic competition. And so Nitro was kind of my first best of both worlds thing, where I was like, okay, as somebody who's, an avid sports fan, I get to see this hyper athleticism, but I also get the early reality TV aspect of, oh, these are just some bad dudes and they're taking over. So it was really,
Mhm.
things really complemented each other and made it for a real easy watch. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's something that's kind of been brought up a few times, is the mixture of these great personalities, but you also add in the athleticism, that wrestling factor that's in there. You kind of need in wrestling, it's so important to find the best of both worlds, and that's where you end up with the best characters and the people who fans gravitate towards a lot. So I want to fast forward a little bit in this timeline and go more towards modern day, but still bringing it back a little bit, not exactly where we are now. When you first started doing stuff with the Ringer, when you wanted to write the features, when you wanted to go to shows like you were at Royal Rumble and you were at WrestleMania doing media, what made you want to go into wrestling media?
So really, it was just kind of an extension of stuff I had been doing in college. I mean, my buddies had like a blog, the South Congress blog, and we were writing about like pop culture and world events and like legal stuff. So we were like doing that. And after I finished college, I've been seeing a girl all through college. We break up. A bunch of my buddies graduate at the same time as me. They move away. And so like I had way more free time. And so I started kind of looking at wrestling on the internet, right? Came across PW Torch, met Travis Bryant, Barjay Purnell. Eventually they asked me to do some co-hosting. And so then I was all of a sudden like I'm hosting a wrestling podcast, right? And it was just I still wanted to write stuff. So I started, writing like op-eds at the Torch. And again, none of this, and I always say this, like none of this was ever intentional.
Mm-hmm.
None of it was. It was like, hey, I'm in this, I'm all of a sudden like I'm in this crew. How do I make myself valuable as a piece of this crew? What can I do to keep this thing going like for the team? And I was the writer out of everybody, and everybody can write, but like that was the thing that I thought I could do uniquely and express opinions in a different way. So I just kind of jumped on it. And then the next thing I know, man, like Kevin from PWI is like reaching out to me, paying me to write about Alley Cat. And then Kevin from Fanside is reaching out to me to write about Jim Cornette. And it just, I've never, and I say this, and it's specifically for like this, I never sent out a resume. You know what I'm saying? I never sent out a resume. I never reached out saying, hey, can you take a look at my work? It just kind of kept going, man. It's just people saw what I was doing and jumped onto it. So you talk about the Ringer, like maybe the thing that people don't know, if you look at what I did for the Ringer, I had never written like that. I had never had a piece like that. I'd interview wrestlers like on like podcasts and we'd done that. I remember I think AJ Gray was the first person to let me interview him for it's an independent show in San Antonio, happened a month before the world shut down. But I had never written anything like, hey, I'm going to do this interview and I'm going to reach out to my man Rick and I'm going to talk about the clothes in his closet and the furniture he likes and blah, 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 blah. That just kind of, it made sense for the relationship that he and I had. And then it kind of became my signature. You know what I mean? Like I wrote one other thing I've done for the Ringer was not an interview. It was literally a review of, I don't know if you were there with me, a review of a December show right before Max and Ricky had their title match in Cedar Park.
Yeah.
But everything else has just kind of been interview. I kind of not like booked myself into a corner, right? But I don't know, it just made sense. And it got really, really good feedback. And it just seemed like a lane that nobody else was really in. Mm-hmm. Like everybody does interviews, but nobody was like using that information, sprinkling in personal anecdotes, that person's history, calling back to a match they had in 2017. So it just, it being in wrestling media was never a goal. It just happened over time as I was writing and podcasting and got more ubiquitous in the space, I guess. So, yeah.
Yeah. And I want to bring this back to the central theme of the show. That's everything about this is about why we love wrestling, why we love Graps, as it's titled. how do you think your work doing the interviews, doing the features, because anybody, I can go read your pieces. If you upload the audio of the interview, I can go listen to it, but you are the one who has to take these people's words and put it into a story. You have to tell the story. You're the one who's actually talking to them. How does that side of things contribute to your love of professional wrestling?
I think that again, the switch flip, Razor Ramon and Scott Hall, it taught me a lot. These guys and girls are guys and girls. You know what I mean? They are not just like us. They live life a little bit differently, but a lot of them, like, they're just people. They just want to kick it. They just want to tell stories. And I think for me, finding that humanity in people means a lot to me. Finding that humanity, finding the vulnerable points. And when I say vulnerable, not like vulnerability making you weak, but man, I bet you've been wanting to talk about this particular aspect of your life for a very long time, and nobody asked you about it, because they either don't think you're capable of it, or they're afraid to talk to you about it, and they're not capable of doing that. So when I watch a wrestling show now, like when I watch an Athena match, right? I understand more of where she's coming from because I've had a conversation with her about the things that motivate her and her being in the right position. You know what I mean? When I see MJF like really emote on a subject, it's because we've talked for hours about the thing that he's talking about. And I really understand his psyche and where he's coming from. You know what I mean? Like my love for this is, some of it is rooted in the fact that I've had the opportunity to peel back the curtain a little bit. And I look at these people like, not that they're playing a role, but they are spending days and weeks and months figuring out exactly how to present to an audience the feeling they want to convey, the emotion they want to convey, the ideas they want to put forward. And man, I just love the process, and I love seeing it come to fruition. So yeah, a lot of my love for wrestling extends outside of just the athletic aspect of it. I'm starting to really understand people's motivations and desires, and to see that play out in person, it means a lot to me. It does.
So I want to tell a little story for anybody listening. So I've been to a few shows with Cam in my life, and it's always the exact same thing happens. This man knows literally everybody. He just be going up to the wrestlers and they know him. He has a conversation with them. And I think one of the coolest moments that I've gotten to witness was at NXT Great American Bash after Carmelo Hayes retains his title against Ilya Dragunov in the main event. Carmelo Hayes just comes up to you and y'all have a moment. What is that like for you to know these wrestlers on a more personal level? You kind of gotten into it a little bit, but just like, it's not just that you're interviewing them and you have an understanding of their purpose or what they want to do in the ring, all of that. These are people you have an actual personal connection with. What's that like, and how does that relate to just how does that add to the wrestling experience overall?
So yesterday, I was going to brunch, and my buddy posts a video of his puppies. He's like a bunch of Rottweiler puppies, and they're like running around in the backyard. So I show Rose, and she's like, "I want to go see the puppies." So I call my man, and I'm like, "Oh, what's up?" He's like, "What did you say?" He said, "Hey, I ain't Sting, I ain't Goldberg. What you calling little old me for?" And it's so funny, right? I think that what it means to me is a lot of these guys have been like a Carmelo Hayes. Carmelo Hayes, even though he's new to television in the last couple of years, he's not new to wrestling. Carmelo Hayes has a triple threat match with Rey Mysterio and Darby Allin under his belt. You know what I mean? Like, he's been doing this. But what happened was, we were at Wale Mania in Dallas. And, it was my first one. And I see him in Trick. And, I see him, and I'm starting to go up to him. And he looks at me, and he's like, "Yo, it's the older me. What's good, baby?" And like, so he knew who I was. You know what I mean? From just, I guess, just social media interactions. And so we had a really cool conversation. Everybody had a good time. So then I think he was either my second or third person. I think he was the second person I interviewed for The Ringer. I hit him via DM. I said, yo, Mello, I just got on with The Ringer. Here's the thing I did with Starks. Like, I'd love to talk to you. And, he was like, all right, cool. Like, like, let's set it up with WWE, PR. Great. Blah, 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 blah. So it comes out, and then he hits me back. He's like, Cam, like, I am blown away. Like, I this is not what I expected. I've never, like, had anybody write about me like this. Like, this is great. And we had a relationship from there. Like last year at WrestleMania in LA, he was we did a show at Sirius, me, Phil Lindsay, Emilio Sparks, and it was Trick and Mello, MVP and Omos, and Ashanti and Top Dollar. So Mello comes in, and we know each other, we talk. Me and Mello like kind of went off, got 2 chairs, had him face the Hollywood Hills. And he says, Cam, I want something out there soon. You know what I mean? And it was just like, okay, this is like, these are friends talking about things outside of just wrestling. How do you feel? What's going on with you? And so it meant a lot. I think that, everybody has fathers, everybody has brothers, everybody has uncles. But I do think that my relationship with a lot of the younger wrestlers is kind of like an uncle or a big cousin in that, I want what's best for you. And it has nothing to do with me. I'm not trying to capitalize off of what you do. I'm not trying to share your spotlight. I think I'm in a unique position to help tell your story. And that's just what it is. And so it meant a lot. He was all sweaty, hugging me. Come on, bro. Like you just wrestled for 30 minutes. What you hugging me for? But it was great, man. I got to kick it with him and Trick at just this last WrestleMania and a bunch of other people. It means a lot that somebody in the media who has a job to do. And, like I ask, listen, I'll tell you this too. At the Royal Rumble press conference, I asked Triple H about the safety of employees and what's being done to make sure that people in positions of power can't take advantage of them. Mm-hmm. And a bunch of wrestlers hit me up and said, thank you. You know what I mean? Because this is not play for me. Like if I'm kicking it with you and spending time with you and talking to you about the things that matter to you and things you want out of life, I would be fake if I didn't go into a room and ask your boss if you're good. You know what I mean? So that's what it means to me. The fact that these people who have let me into their world understand that I'm not just doing it for a quick buck, that I'm doing it because I value what you do, and more so, I value who you are. And if there's anything I can do to help that out, that's what I'm supposed to do. So, yeah.
Yeah. So I want to move a little bit more. We talked a lot about the stuff outside the ring, the personal relationships. And I do agree, like there's a few wrestlers and people in the industry I've gotten to know, and it just adds a whole other layer to everything. That makes you, I say that it makes you just appreciate everything a lot more when you get to know the people. But I want to go in the ring a little bit and get more into what we love about in the ring. And it wouldn't be a conversation between me and you if I didn't
I know it's coming.
The great tag team debate of the Usos or the Young Bucks and who the better team is. But I'm going to take it a little bit different than so for anybody watching, there's 2 tag teams. If you just don't know wrestling, there's 2 tag teams, the Usos and the Young Bucks. And they are the 2 greatest tag teams of the last decade. And a lot of fans have an argument about who the better team is. And it really just comes down to your personal preference, because they are similar in that they just throw a lot of super kicks, but we wrestle very differently. The Bucks use more high flying cruiserweight moves, and the Usos are a lot more grounded in what they do. I would consider them to be more brawlers than anything else, even though they do have the Uso splash and the super kicks and all these things. They are a lot more, I wouldn't say technically sound, but more grounded in their work.
Yeah, more striking based.
Yeah, more striking. 100%. More striking based. So I want to talk more about, like, I know that you prefer the Usos, 100%. That's been made clear to me for the last 2 years that I've known you. But what is it specifically when you're talking about why you love wrestling? What is it specifically that makes the Usos stand out to you over a team like the Young Bucks?
I think it's the physicality of it. I think that so like Kurt Hennig, Scott Hall, Bret Hart, Three of my favorite wrestlers. I always call them, like, even though they're not Triple H, the three H's, Hall, Hart, and Hennig, right? There was just a snap and just a thud in a good way to the things that they did. You know what I mean? There was a crispness. And I think that the Usos, while they don't use as many holds and actual moves, it's kind of it looks like it hurts. Mm-hmm. Like, that's my thing. It looks like it hurts. You know what I mean? And the Bucks, and I've come around and I've said, like, look, the athleticism that they show with the things that they do sometimes really does, like, it blows me out the water. They do some really, really cool stuff. I just think more so with the Usos, it looks like every single thing matters that happens. There's not a whole lot of fat. That's the meat on the bone that you're getting. You know what I mean? You are getting that punch is supposed to hurt. That kick is supposed to hurt. When I do a Samoan drop, that's supposed to hurt. When I do a suplex, that's supposed to hurt. I just find it to be a more physical style that I appreciate, even though they do. Like, listen, if somebody said, hey, the Usos took a lot of that from the Young Bucks, cool, totally understand it. But yeah, I think there's just a physicality to it that I always appreciate. That like listen, if you told me Shawn Michaels was the greatest American wrestler and not Bret Hart, I would say fine. I'd say okay. But what Bret's in there doing looks like it hurts more to me, and I like it. Like Eddie Guerrero. As great as Rey Mysterio is, Rey Mysterio's, you could tell me Rey Mysterio is the greatest American wrestler, and I couldn't argue back. Eddie Guerrero, with the cruiserweight stuff he was doing, that looked like it hurt. You know what I mean? Like, what's my man's name? Ultimo Dragon. That looked like it hurt. Them backbreakers look like they hurt every single time. That running power bomb looked like it hurt every single time. Even when he does, like, a move he created, the acai moonsault. A lot of people do moonsaults and don't hit the guy. You know, and they can glance and blow. No, this looks like it hurts. And so that was always my thing. Not to hurt a guy, but Bret Hart is famous like, I never injured nobody. Well, you could have fooled me because it looks like it hurts. And that's what gets me. Like, of course I'm here for the fantasy and wrestling. Who wasn't a Undertaker fan? Who didn't love that Great Muta just had some mist on him at all times? But yeah, it would be the physicality of those strikes, of those moves that really makes them more my style.
Yeah, I'm someone who goes with the Young Bucks because of I prefer athleticism over. And while I do agree, I think the Usos lay things in and make it look like it hurts more. I just have a different view of what I like, and that's what I've been trying to highlight with this series is how different everybody's view of wrestling is. Where I talked to Kate from Fightful, and her thing was she loved someone like a Zack Sabre Jr. She likes the techers who do the submission moves because she likes the art of that and how everything flows from one thing to the other. I talked to Sean Ross Sapp, and he had talked about how he loves the he talks about how he loves like the big matchups. If I remember correctly, that one was a little bit ago, but that's something he's always talked to me about, is how he's there for like the big matchups. And I love how everybody just has something different that they like about wrestling. It really just makes it better, in my opinion.
Absolutely. That's why we're able to, and talking about media, that's why we're able to tell these stories in different ways and highlight different aspects, because this thing is not uniform. You know what I mean? This thing is not one style to do it. All these styles make up the totality of what we enjoy. And because we find different aspects of it that we like, that's why we're able to have like such a diverse, such a diverse catalog of words and videos and art styles. And yeah, because these things are different, but so are we. So we can all take something from it, like, to make up the totality of it. Absolutely.
Mm-hmm. So I'm going to end this with one more question, and we're going to bring it back for this question to the central topic, what the show is called. But I'm going to give you a stipulation, because it's not wrestling if you don't have a stipulation on something. I want you to answer this question in either one phrase, one word, whatever is easier for you, because I was supposed to do it one word and everybody already Ella J cheated. She used a hyphen. Then Sean Ross Sapp just gave a paragraph. So I was like, all right, there's no more rules anymore, which I guess also goes with wrestling. The stipulation is never followed. But I'm going to ask you it, and I'm going to try to get a one word, one phrase works too. Why do you love Graps?
Pain.
All right. That's perfect. I love that one. It's one of my favorite answers that's been given so far. It's one of the great things about wrestling, the pain of professional wrestling.
It's art, man, and when I say pain, I don't just mean in the ring. Like I
Mhm.
said, when I watch an MJF talk about being bullied in school, you know what I mean?
Mhm.
When I watch a Mark Briscoe have the fight of his life in the wake of tragedy, you know what I mean? When I watch a locker room come together, when someone falls, like we all have those moments in life, right? We all have hard days, especially, Caden, you being younger, I'll be 40 next year. And I had a buddy whose mother passed away last week and his sister passed away the week before that. As you get older, people people leave at a way faster clip than you expect. And while there are a lot of different ways people, cope and deal, watching somebody turn that tragedy into their art is something that's uniquely human.
Mhm.
And we get to experience that in wrestling in a way that you don't necessarily get to in sport. Like, Russell Westbrook had that crazy triple double, that 2020 triple double when Nipsey Hussle died, right? And as cool of a moment as that is, that's one moment in time. There's no preparing for that. There's no setup for that. And we really get to watch the people that we appreciate, the people we respect, in some cases, people we look up to. We get to watch them push through tragedy in pro wrestling in a way that you do not get to in real time in most cases. And so, yeah, watching people deal with that pain, watching people process, it means a lot to me. And it means more to me each day I'm finding out. So, yeah.
Beautifully put, Cam. Cam Hawkins, Seahawk, the uncle of professional wrestling. As a lot of us have called you, like someone called you a few weeks or a few months ago. Someone said that you're like the guidance counselor of
That is what
professional
they
wrestling. Also,
said.
really good. Thank you so much for joining me on this episode of Why We Love Graps.
Thank you for having me, Caden. Anytime.